Okay, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come out here and talk to scholars earnestly at work and editors earnestly at work. I love books. I love to hear about new books. I love ideas. Most editors probably feel the same. We get really excited about hearing about new things. And so everyone will be interested, or at least, you can do your best to get them interested. The first thing to ask is, what is a book? And I was specifically told to say, a dissertation is not a book. Say that again. A dissertation is not a book. I received many, many proposals, and I talked to a lot of young scholars, and often they told me, oh, my committee was really great, and they definitely told me to write it as a book, and that's what I did. And so you'll see, it really is, it's a book. And I've rarely, perhaps never, seen that was actually the case. And the big difference is because when you're writing your dissertation, and it is a thing in and of itself, and it is a great and good thing, but that is for an audience of 3, sometimes 4, but often 3 people. And when you are writing a book, you hopefully are trying to reach maybe 300, 3,000, something along that order, right? So you can think of it in terms like this. When a colleague, when you talk to a colleague and they come into your office and they sit down and they say, so what is your book about? You have a certain answer for them. When you're in front of the classroom and you're talking to your students and one of your students says, what is your book about? You have perhaps a different answer. And when you are at the Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, what have you, table, and your favorite aunt turns to you and says, so, what is your book about? You have a very different answer as well, right? And so the first thing to think about is, who am I talking to and what is my audience? And those are very different things. Books for students do one kind of thing. Books for your colleagues do something else. And so the way that you conceive, think about, write, what it is that you're concerned with is very different along those lines. And most of the books that I publish are for your colleagues and perhaps for the campus as a whole. So I'm always pushing people to be interdisciplinary and try to not just talk to anthropologists or geographers, but to talk to economists or politics folks or whatever, to try to not get so deep into one's own disciplinary language, but to try to open it up a little bit. So that's the first thing to think about. And I guess really for the dissertation to book, another thing that's important is that for a lot of you, it's also tenure granting, right? So keep that in mind. You might want to save the book that is for Penguin or that is the big trade book that is doing different work for later in your career, right? And then you can sell hundreds of thousands of copies. Okay, so that's the first step, is thinking about your audience and thinking about what you have to say. The second step is the hook. So what? Who cares? Tell me. You need to know. You need to tell me why it's important, what's so great about it, and why anyone else would care. And so you need to think about perhaps the way that you phrase these things. So sometimes it's the first book on X. It's the first book on Occupy Wall Street. I was down there, I saw what happened, here it is. That's going to be an ebook, by the way. But by the time we get to it, it's too late. Or the first book on the banking crisis, the first book on, AIDS, orphans, whatever have you. Or think about it, maybe it's not the first book on a given topic, but it's the first book from a Marxist perspective, a feminist perspective, whatever perspective you're writing from. Maybe it's a book that has a comparative component that's never been done before, so you're comparing schools in Germany to schools in the US and thinking about immigration in very specific ways and assimilation. So again, new topic, new method, new research, new approach, new data set. It could be that what's so great about your book is that you have a huge data set. You did 40 years worth of research, on X area, and that's amazing. And people will go crazy for the data itself, right? Okay, so the next thing to do is to think about who should publish this. And the easiest thing to do is to just look on your bookshelf. When publishers look at a bookshelf, We look at the bookshelf not like most people do. We look down here at the bottom, and we look to see who all those names are. I see Stanford, California, that's what I'm looking for. And I don't pay as much attention to the actual title of the book. I'm just curious to see who the spines are. When we visit you in your offices, we pay attention to that. We definitely look to see who's on your shelf. So look at that, and I guarantee you, if you look at your own bookshelf, you will see that there probably are 3 or 4 publisher names that start to pop out at you. And in all likelihood, those are probably the 3 or 4 publishers that you should target, right? And I would start the net a little wider and target a few, and don't get your sights set on one. You want to try to not to put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So find those. Now comes some more research, more work on your part. You have to go to all those publishers' websites. You have to find out who the right people are, find out who the editor is that would be the right person to approach, and take a look at the kinds of books that they're publishing. We all have, catalogs. This is my sociology catalog, so you can page through this and see what's in here. This is our seasonal spring catalog. You can go through here and see what's in here. You can get these at conferences. They're easy to come by. And again, try to figure out, would my book be in here? Does it seem like, are there other books like that in here? Okay, so then what you're going to do is you're going to write a proposal. I have proposal guidelines that I'll pass out. These are pretty standard. These are definitely oh, sorry. I was thinking you didn't need that. These are pretty standard. These are pretty much what publishers want, but definitely go to each site and get their specific guidelines. Definitely there. And find out how to do it. Some presses don't want online. Some people want hard copies. Whatever it is, do what they tell you to do. Just make the whole process easier. Okay. Oh, I did what I always do, which is I didn't keep one. Sorry. Okay. So, you want me to go over this, right? Yeah. Okay. So basically and briefly, the things that are key are the concept. Again, so what? What's important? Why do we care? And specifically, again, for a university press in particular, the scholarly contribution. I really do care. I do want to know. And again, as broad terms as you can put it in, for me, that's appreciated. Talk about who the book is for, who's the intended audience, what are the fields. It shouldn't be everyone is going to read my book. That's probably not likely. And you might not want to have every last it's going to be media, it's going to be politics, it's going to be sociology. Those are the areas, and these are the courses. I can see it in political communication. I can see it in sociology of the media. Be pretty specific about where it might go, because that helps the publisher decide, is this right for, we say, is this right for our list? Which means, do we publish things like it? Have we been successful in those fields? Do we have other books already that share the same point of view or disciplinary conventions, so that we know how to publish it, we know who to market it to, we know where it goes. That's what publishers are looking for. Most publishers don't publish in every single field. So there definitely would be publishers that aren't right for you because they're not in those fields that you might publish in. Okay. And then the competing books is always nice. So, you don't want to pick things that are Bowling Alone often would get cited a lot. That was a phenomenon into itself and sold hundreds of thousands of copies. That might not be the best one to pick. Or, Gender Trouble, things like that. Just give us a sense and try to pick recent books. And it's definitely helpful to pick books that the publisher herself has published. Because then, again, that helps to place your book within the publisher's oeuvre. Okay, and then the table of contents, talk about what's going to be in each chapter. We need to know the basics, like how long is it going to be? Most books that we publish are about 100,000 words. That's a good number to know. So do a word count. include the references, include the notes. It all counts. If you do a word count and you see that your book is only about 50,000 words, I would say you are not saying enough. If you do a word count and you find that your manuscript totals up to about 200,000 words, you need to start cutting. Because those are 100,000 words is a pretty good barometer of where you need to be. You need to have a completion date in mind. You need to know when you're likely to be done. Not the day and year and day, all that, but at least the spring of 2013, that it's sort of in sight, because we need to know that eventually you're going to get a contract and there's going to be a date on there. And in theory, you're going to be meeting that date for your final manuscript completion. One of the things that's really tough, I find, for going from dissertation to book is that when you're doing your dissertation, you are defending, right? That's the whole point. You're defending. But now you have to think about going off of defense and going on offense. Okay, so that you don't have to be so defensive about why it is you want to do what you want to do. I assume from the get-go, you have a good reason for why you're doing what you want to do, right? And that other people are going to care about this reason, and that it's important, and that that you're starting from that place of confidence, and sort of take charge attitude, and you don't have to talk about everyone else before you. You don't have to do all that kind of lit review stuff. And that's, by the way, the lit review is also a chapter that usually go, right? The one thing I also often say to people doing from dissertation to book is that you have that first chapter where you set it up, then you have your lit review, then you have maybe 3 or 4 substantive chapters, then you finally have your chapter at the end where you actually say something, right? Right? Take that chapter, take it to the beginning, start there. You will have a much better, more interesting, more complicated book to tell us about if you begin with an idea, right? It shouldn't all be, and then we'll get to that. It's coming, right? If you start with your complicated, interesting, innovative, great, cool idea, and then you take us on your journey from there. Okay, what else? Okay, so some tips on submitting. Do contact the publishers. One thing that's always great is 2 to 3 weeks before the big conference, send me an email and say I'm going to be at the American Sociological meeting in Las Vegas. Could we meet? Attach your proposal and your vitae, and set up an appointment. Stopping by the booth at the conference is probably you're not gonna see me there. Dropping off your card thinking I'm gonna email you it's not gonna happen. And for most editors, it doesn't happen. So you wanna try to get in advance. Use your advisors. Ask them to proffer introductions. It's hard for me to say no to anyone who Craig Calhoun might wanna introduce me to. I'm certainly gonna take that person seriously. So use those people. Do you want me to say the process really quick? The actual process?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there can be more detailed questions after.
Yeah. Okay. So once you do that, so you send me that email that says let's meet. I say great, we'll meet. We have our quick meeting at the conference. You send me all of your stuff. Usually, if it's a manuscript, if it's a dissertation to manuscript, I will want to see the whole thing. You send that all to me. It's revised. It's not the original thing. It's revised. And then it goes out for review. I will usually find 2 reviewers that are familiar enough with the work that I think are good to get comments. That might take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks to get those comments back in. I get them in. I send them to you. We talk about them. We say these are great. They love your work. It's the best thing ever. You write a response letter where you also talk about the things they didn't like, and you address those. Then I take the reviews, your original proposal, the response. I present that to an editorial board, and we discuss. We say, great, good book, sign it up. At that point, we send you a contract, which has the deadline, which has the word count, which has things like the royalties and the terms. All of those things are in there. And then for our process, usually it's about a year later from when you're signing the contract. Within that year, you're going to get reviewed again, sometimes by the same people, sometimes by different people. But ultimately, that deadline on the contract is supposed to be the date you're going to turn in a final version. And then once you do, then I turn it over to production. Takes them almost a year, 10 months to a year to actually produce the final book. So Jessica's book, I'm not sure when she turned that in, but I mean, this just came out. It was definitely a 2-year process. And that's how you should think of it. It's usually about a year, I mean, 2.5 years if you include maybe the reviewing and just figuring all that out for yourself too. And so you need to think about that for your tenure, because I definitely have people that, I need this for tenure, and I'm sorry, I can't, it's not always about your tenure clock. We try to be quick, and some presses aren't as quick or can't be as quick. It's just not about that. So you need to, going in, you need to kind of plan all those things out. And then it gets published and it gets great reviews and it wins awards and it's fabulous. And most importantly, you get to go to the Thanksgiving table and say, here's what my book is about. And everyone goes, wow, it's really cool. And it's exciting. And hopefully, you do media interviews and you get to do all those kinds of things that we very much want you to do as well. So good?